Namaste and good morning. I hope I am audible. From the Himalayan Yoga Association, a very warm welcome for a 300 hours anatomy lecture. We have studied the bone joints. Also, we have seen the types of cartilage in the yesterday session, and today we will see some movement and motions about the bone joint and some yoga exercises for the warm-up of our all the bone joints. Okay, according to the syllabus, we will proceed further. And now we will begin with the opening prayer along with the Om chant. Those who have missed the session can watch the recording again. I am just reminding you so that you do not break the link in between the sessions. Let us chant the opening prayer, the Pavavana mantra, the purification mantra. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dhanyavad. Namaste. Thank you. Just let me check if I. Okay, it's working. So let us start first with the motion and movement of our bone joints. Yesterday, what have we studied? All the types of bone joints. That means the unmovable bone joints, those joints of the bones which we cannot move. Then we have seen the semi-movable bone joints, those joints of the bones which can be moved in some proportion, that is cartilaginous bone joints. The unmovable bone joints are fibrous bone joints. So cartilage bone joints, you find it in your vertebral column. It moves the vertebral column and makes it semi-movable so that we can do the back bend and forward bend and the twisting asanas. Then the next we have seen the ball and the socket and the hinge and the different kinds of condyloid or saddle and gliding. So these all the different types of joints were the part of movable bone joints. That means synovial bone joints. Apart from all these joints which we have seen how and what we gave the examples, we have also seen and studied about the cartilage and its types. So we have these three different types of cartilage. The first one was hyaline cartilage, the second one was the fibrocartilage, and the third one was the elastic cartilage type. Then we have given all the examples of the cartilage where it can be found in our body. In the yesterday session, you must watch in the recordings. Today we will begin with the motion and movement of our bone joints. So what are the motion and movement of our bone joints? That we're gonna see today. So movement of joints. In what range of motion and movement the joint can move? In what range of motion the joint can move? So that is movement of joints. Here, the first, I am gonna write down the first movement, flexion. This word flexion is what? When we decrease the angle in between two parts or two joints. So we have this one bone and we have the other bone. So in between this is our joint. So when you decrease the angle in between the joint, that is flexion, bending, flexion movement. So flexion is nothing but to decrease the angle of joints. Okay. Then what is the next? We have extension. The word extension. What will be the extension? For example, if we increase the angle, so this is the decrease. If we extend, the angle in between increases. So if we increase the angle in between two parts or two bones, that is in between the joint, that is known as extension movement of joints. So we have to here write down increase the angle of joints. Okay. The next we have abduction and adduction. We're gonna speak about it. First one, abduction. I will write it down. The word. So abduction movement. What is abduction movement? Abduction is what? The movement of the part or the joint away from midline of body. So moving a part or the joint away from the midline of the body. So when we move the arm outside, when we bring the legs outside, when we take distance in between the legs, when we spread our arms wide, for example, in warrior two postures, for example, in triangle pose, if we take the distance in between the legs, many standing postures, we just split the leg and Prasarit Padottanasana, like one of the Ashtanga yoga posture. In this, we abduct the part or that joint. So when we bring the arm outside, this is the midline of the body, and the arm is away from the midline. It is moving away from the midline. That is known as abduction movement of our joints. Whereas, similarly, the adduction movement of our joint is movement toward the midline of the body. So the difference in between the abduction and adduction is just movement is away in the abduction, and in the adduction the movement is inside towards the midline, so inner side. When we bring the arm inside, that is towards, like in the eagle pose, we bring the legs in, or if we are samasthiti, we are in the midline neutral position. So in different postures, if we bring our leg or our arm or any part of the body towards the midline section, this is lateral side, this is midline. That is adduction, the midsection of the body. So only difference in flexion is to decrease the angle, extension is to increase the angle, abduction is movement away from the midline, and this is towards the midline. Are the key words which you need to remember as the movement of joint. These are the key terms: flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction. Now we will proceed further and see what are the next. So number 5, I will write down, but before I will erase these 4. Number 5, we can talk about circumduction or rotation. So what is exactly the circumduction and rotation? So circumduction, number 5, is the movement of our joint, so movement in a shape of a cone. So the movement of our joint, we can say, which moves in a shape like cone. So that movement of rotation, which is not a complete rotation, but like our digits, we can say. Just for example, here, make it that digit. Here, finger. Tell me what we have seen about the fingers yesterday was example of condyloid joint. The same condyloid joints, which are movable bone joints, are the example of circumduction movement of joints. So circumduction and condyloid is same, where we move the fingers in a cone-like shape. So this is what in a cone, which we can move. This movement of our fingers is known as the circumduction movement, the digit example I have given. Similarly, where this is only the difference between circumduction and rotation, where rotation, as it says, rotating or pivoting around the axis of bone. Namaste, Naringa.
Namaste. I'm at work, so I won't be able to talk much, but namaste and good morning.
Namaste, Naringa. What have you said?
I said namaste. I'm at work, so I will not be able to talk much, but I'm listening.
Okay, no problem. So yesterday we have seen the bone joints, all the bone joints, and all the types of cartilage. Today we are watching the motion and movement of bone joints. So movement of joint, that means this joint will move in how many range of motion. So the range of motion of all these joints which will move, that we are seeing. That first term was flexion, the second term was extension. So flexion of the joint is to decrease the angle between two parts. Extension of the joint was to increase the angle in between the joint, between two parts. Then we have seen abduction. Abduction is to bring the part of the body away from the midline of the body. Adduction is to bring the parts and the limbs of the body towards the midline. Now, we are watching circumduction and rotation. Namaste, Shri Krupaji. Am I audible, Shri Krupa?
Yes, Ji.
Okay. Is this a first class for you or second or third, Shri Krupaji?
Ji, it is my first.
It is your first.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you just started the course now? Or
No, Ji, I finished my course in January at 𝐻𝐴, but the online class today only I'm attending, your class particularly.
okay, okay, no problem. Because
Ji,
this was
just wondering, today is Ganesh Chaturthi, right? How come the classes are... I thought today there is no class actually. I just logged in, just like that I logged in, and then I was actually surprised. Today is Ganesh Chaturthi, right?
And so we have the Ganesh Chaturthi of festival, and but the classes are being
Okay,
there.
okay.
And
Okay, ji, okay.
after, yeah.
Okay.
I wish you a happy Ganesh Chaturthi and lots of blessings as well from Lord Ganesha to all of us. We have just been watching about the movement of the joints. It will be a bit confused because it is your first day. We have seen the bone joints in the yesterday's class. We have seen the cartilage and its types in the yesterday's session. Today, how these joints will move, that terms we are just looking. So if you want to go and connect with the flow, please try to watch the recording if it is available on the Himalayan Yoga School's channel. Now, about the circumduction, this is the movement of our digits in the shape of the cone. About the rotation, the rotating of any part or our bone joints in around one axis. That is what this term indicates about the joints. The next term which we will see about the lateral rotation or medial rotation. So this term which we need to remember as a professional yoga teacher. So we have the medial rotation. We have the lateral rotation. So instead of saying internal rotation, and instead of saying external rotation, we have the bones and the muscles named after some anatomical terms. That means the medial side is internal and lateral side is external. So if we move the arm or our leg, or if we rotate our neck as well, or our wrist or any joint towards away from the midline, so lateral side of the body, if I am moving this arm outside, this is my lateral rotation. But if I will move my arm from the shoulder joint, the movement is happening from inside. This is the medial rotation. Medial rotation, which is towards the midline, and lateral rotation, that is towards or away from the midline. So this is what internal and external rotation. Similarly, we have the medial movement, lateral movement. Medial means internally, laterally means externally. These things we need to understand over here. Again, we have seen 8 terms now. First 4 I have already erased. Now again I will erase these 4 terms and will write down the new terms. So medial rotation is internal rotation, lateral rotation, external rotation of our bone joint. Our movement of our body is only happening on the bone joints, nowhere else, nothing. We cannot move our bicep, we cannot move our forearm. This movement is happening how? If we are moving our elbow joint, if we are moving our shoulder joint, then the whole arm will move. We cannot move our arm unless and until we move our joint. So this is what all the movement of the joint, which we are watching the term. So pronation and the supination, number 9. I will write down the next term, pronation. Pronation means whatever actions or whatever practice we do, where our palms are facing down. This is pronation, where we lie down on the back or on the abdomen, or the postures like cobra pose, bhujangasana, the postures like chaturangandasana, the postures like cat cow pose, where our palms are towards the floor. So this is what the palms towards the floor, facing down. That posture or that position is known as prone posture, or to be known as pronation, where the supine postures are known as supination. In the supination, our palms, supination is that term where our palms are facing up, where our palms are facing up. So in the very simple pose, we can say Shavasana if we lie down, not a simple pose actually to practice. We do not have to sleep in that pose. We just have to lie down to rest and focus on each and every part to relax with the muscles and the joints. Here in the Shavasana, we have to face our palms up. So supine postures are those when we lie down on the back and when we practice any posture where our palms are being facing upwards. Those postures are to be known as supine postures or supine postures, where the process is known as supination. Makarasana, the crocodile pose, and the rest of the postures, cobra and others, cat cow and everything, prone postures. Then after the pronation and the supination, the next term I will write down here about the foot. So this was all about the palms. Before I write down about the foot, we will study about the shoulder first. So about the shoulder, I will write down first. Protraction term. So protraction and retraction. Protraction and retraction are the terms. I have not written protraction. So protraction and retraction are only about the shoulders when we bring the scapula. So scapula is our shoulder blade. Clavicle is our collarbone. When we move these two scapula bone, you will find it in our skeletal system, which we have studied in our 2 to 3 days back. In the appendicular skeletal, you will find this bone for the Sri Krupaji here, who is the new one, just joined for the first day. The rest, this scapula, when we move it in front, this movement is to be known as protraction movement. And when we move it backwards, that movement is known as retraction movement. So drawing this scapula in front, I will write down as a definition. When we draw this scapula, that is shoulder blade, in front, that is our protraction. And when we draw this scapula at the back, drawing the scapula backward is known as retraction. So this movement is protraction in the front and retraction in the back. About the prone, about the palms facing down, supine, about it up. So this is in front, the scapula, this is in back, retraction. Again, these are the simple terms. If these terms are being cleared, I will proceed further. We have seen now the 12 important terms. We have started with the flexion movement. Now we have came now here till the retraction. First term we have seen the flexion, which it was just to flex the joint, to decrease the angle in between the joints. These two parts to decrease flexion. Extension movement, when we increase this angle, extend the arm, the angle in between two parts increase. So flexion, and this is extension. Flexion, extension. Then we have seen abduction. What was the abduction? When we bring or move the part of the body away from the midline. This is our midline of the body. When you bring it away out in Virabhadrasana, in Trikonasana, like in these postures, in standing, Prasarit Padottanasana, when we bring it out, that is abduction movement. And when we bring the arms or the legs or the limbs towards the midline of the body, that is adduction movement. So to abduct away from the midline to adduct towards the midline. Then we have seen the rotation, the circumduction, and also we have seen the medial rotation with the lateral rotation. Circumduction was the movement like a cone in the digits. Rotation is to rotate our limbs or any joint. Medial rotation is to rotate it internally. Lateral rotation to rotate it externally. Now we have seen the pronation, the palms which should be face down. Supination, our palms of our hands should be faced up. For protraction, where our shoulder blade scapula should move in front. Retraction is the term used while teaching as the instructor when we draw the scapula backwards. So all these terms we should know as a yoga practitioner. There are some more terms that we will see now after. Let me erase this now. I hope this is getting clear for you. Neringa is at the work. She may not speak much, but I hope if it is clear for her as well. Number 13. So about the legs, we will see. So about the legs, about the feet. First, I will write down the word dorsiflexion. Dorsiflexion. About the foot, about the feet we are talking. About our both feet. The example of dorsiflexion I will tell you, but just imagine, I cannot show you my feet at the moment due to this camera right over here. Example is just consider this hand as a feet. For example, this thing. So dorsiflexion is what? When we bend our ankle. So this is your ankle. If you imagine this is at our foot, when we bend it in. So when we point our toe back here, when we decrease, that is flexion, dorsiflexion. And when we will move our foot down, pointing the toe as well, that angle is known as plantar flexion. So dorsiflexion is what? Where flexing the ankle inside, it moves up. So flexing the ankle, moving it up. We can say. So this is your ankle, foot, dorsiflexion of the foot, plantar flexion of the foot. So we can write the next as well, plantar flexion, where we can speak about the plantar flexion, flexing the ankle, again, flexing means bending, flexing means bending the angle to move the down. So plantar flexion, when our toe moves down, ankle, we flex it down, flexing it up, dorsiflexion of the foot. We have inversion and aversion of the foot as well. So inversion of the foot is when we bring the toes towards the midline of the body. And we do also have aversion term of for the foot. That is, we bring the toes away from the midline of the body. That we're gonna write it down now. So turning our sole, turning the sole of foot inward is inversion movement. So when we turn the sole of the foot inward, so for example, if this is your foot, this is your midline of the body. If you turn it towards the midline, then that is your inversion movement of the foot. This is again your neutral position. And when we turn the sole of the foot outside, that is your aversion movement of the foot. Neutral position, inversion, neutral, aversion. Dorsiflexion, plantaflexion down, dorsiflexion. If we consider this as an example of the foot, even if I'm showing the wrist, just to clear the concept. As this is online, aversion is what? Turning the sole of foot outward, outwards or inwards. Again, these two terms, inward, we could have said internally, or we could have said medial. So turning the sole of the foot towards the medial side, towards the midline, inwards. Outwards means lateral side, externally. So this is what all about the movement of our foot. Dorsiflexion, plantaflexion, inversion and aversion movement. Up till now, how many we have seen? 16 types of movement we have seen. We will see some more movements now. Again, I hope these movements are being cleared first. Then we proceed now. The next we can speak about the pelvic. Yes, pelvic is the most important joint in our whole body. If we are practicing yoga, then always remember before back and the spine, our pelvic is the most important part in our body, considering in terms of yoga. If we cannot keep our hips square or in alignment, we would never keep our spine straight or in proper alignment. Definitely, there will be the changes in the shape of the spine from person to person. Not everyone's spine would be in neutral position unless and until that person works on the arrangement of the hip. So if your hip, the pelvic joints, the hip bone joints, the ball and socket joints are in the proper proportion, then and then only we can keep our spine erect and straight or in a proper alignment in all the postures without using any props. If the pelvic is not in the proper alignment, then we need to use some props to adjust our part of the body. Using props is not bad, but we have to use if we cannot keep it in a proper alignment at the first, then it gets used to our body and the what we practice consistently. About asanas, I am talking important. And if it gets consistent, then we don't need any props. Our body gets back in the neutral position, the spine. Here. So number 17, I will write it down. Anterior tilt of the pelvic and posterior tilt. This term, anterior, this word means in the front. Posterior means in the back. So when the top of our pelvic, is backward, that is the posterior tilt, back. Anterior means when the top of the pelvic. So when we consider our lower back, at the end of the lower back, our hip bone starts. So when we tilt that hip bone in the front, so when we move that top of the pelvic in the front, that means that is anterior tilt. When we move it in up direction, upward. And when we move that top of the pelvic after holding our waist back, that is our posterior tilt. Okay. So posterior tilt is what? When our tailbone is under. Tailbone is inside our pelvic only, at the base of the spine where your root chakra belongs, Mooladhara chakra. When we move it up, the top of the pelvic, then our hip is out. That is anterior tilt. So when you bring the hip out, that is bringing the top of the pelvic in the front. That is anterior tilt. Posterior tilt is what? When you bring the top of the pelvic behind and taking the hip in. This is what the two terms indicate. Also, about the body, I will also say the lateral flexion, which we have missed out. And number 20, I will write about the medial flexion. I will write down. So lateral flexion is flexing the body sideways. So this is our flexion movement, but movement at the side. So lateral flexion and lateral extension. These two terms which we have missed down, which I remember now, is the side stretches of body. So laterally, when we will stretch, so this is the lateral flexion, but this is what? Inside lateral extension. So when we extend it laterally, one gets flexed laterally. One gets flexion, the other gets extended. So lateral flexion, lateral extension. Anterior tilt is the pelvic bone. When we move it, the top of pelvic in front. And here, top of pelvic at the back. So in this case, our hip is out, and in this case, in the posterior tilt, our hip is inside. Hip moves in. When we can move the pelvic in front, hip moves out. When we move the pelvic, the hip moves. So this is what the 20 terms which we have seen today in the today's sessions. Apart from it, if I would ask you about these terms at the moment, no need to worry about it. Try to go through it and make sure while you apply in your teaching, you practice with these terms. Also about the bone joints which we have seen. Yesterday, we have discussed about the fibrous bone joints. Then we have discussed about the cartilaginous bone joints and synovial bone joints. So these three bone joints in simple terms are known as unmovable bone joints, semi-movable bone joints, and movable bone joints, where we have also seen the different subtypes of synovial bone joints, that is movable bone joints. After the subtypes of the movable bone joints, we have seen the types of cartilage, and all these are the movement of movable bone joints. So the joints which can be only moved, that is synovial bone joints, are these terms, 20 terms, starting with the flexion, then we have seen extension, then we have seen abduction, then we have seen adduction. After that, we have seen the circumduction, we have seen the rotation, the lateral rotation, and medial rotation. After we have seen the movement of foot dorsiflexion, the plantarflexion, the inversion of the foot, the eversion of the foot. After that, after this torsion, we have seen the pronation, where the palms are facing down, supination, where the palms are facing up. Also, apart from that, we have seen the scapula movement, protraction, that is, the shoulder is in, and retraction, the shoulder is behind. After the 16 terms we have watched about the anterior tilt of the pelvic, the posterior tilt of the pelvic, the lateral flexion of the body, and lateral extension of the body, where it happens in the triangle postures or in the Parshva Konasana or in the Trikonasana, where we laterally bend our body. So one side gets extended, where the other side gets flexed. I hope you got these things. Is this clear, Meringa or Sri Krupaji?
Yes, Ji.
Thank you so much. We will end up this class with a small closing prayer. A bit tough for the Krupaji. It will be a bit tough for you at the starting, but you will get it slowly, everything. Once you will go through this skeletal system. This is the end of skeletal system today. So
Okay.
we started with the skeletal system on third day. Today we are ending with all these joints and bones.
Okay, Ji. Yeah. I'll go through the videos, Ji.
Yes, anytime. So tomorrow we can start with the new system and we will see about
Ji,
it.
for me, my problem is that I'm stuck with some work, Ji. I cannot attend classes continuously. But anyways,
No
just
problem.
because the recorded videos are there, I will refer to that.
Yes, there's no problem.
Okay.
Yes. Anytime if you have any question, can ask in the class.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much.
Would you like to chant one Om before we end? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you so much, both of you, and have a good day. Ganesh Chaturthi. May Lord Ganesha bless us all.
Thank you, Ji. Same to you.
I end up the meeting.
Okay.